You're probably working on 10 different things right now. Multiple projects, several income streams you're trying to build, a dozen skills you think you need to master. You're hustling, grinding, doing more. And somehow, despite all that effort, you're not getting proportionately wealthier. You're exhausted, spread thin, and the results don't match the energy you're putting in. Here's what's actually happening. You're violating the most powerful wealth-building principle that exists, and it's costing you years of your life and hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost income. Right now, someone else is working on just 2 things, not 10, 2. They're ignoring 80% of the opportunities everyone else is chasing. They look lazy compared to you. They're doing less. But here's what doesn't make sense. They're making 5 times more money than you. They're building wealth faster. They have more free time, and they're not stressed. What do they know that you don't? They understand something that Richard Koch spent decades researching and proving. Something that sounds too simple to be true, but is mathematically undeniable. 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. And if you're spending equal time on everything, you're wasting 80% of your life on activities that generate almost nothing. This isn't motivation, this is math. This is the 80-20 principle. And understanding it is the difference between working yourself to death for mediocre results and building serious wealth while working less than everyone around you. Welcome to Wealth Notes Lane. This channel is about thinking clearly in a noisy world, about money, business, and building a future that actually holds up over time. Today, we're breaking down the 80-20 principle by Richard Koch, and we're applying it specifically to building wealth in 2026. Because this book isn't just about productivity, it's about understanding that most of what you're doing is worthless, and the few things that matter are worth infinitely more than you realize. And once you see which 20% actually creates wealth, everything changes.
Richard Koch didn't invent the 80-20 principle. It was discovered by Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto in 1896 when he noticed that 80% of Italy's wealth was owned by 20% of the population. But Koch spent his entire career proving that this pattern shows up everywhere. In business, in investing, in relationships, in time management, and most importantly, in wealth creation. The principle is simple but brutal. 80% of outcomes come from 20% of causes. 80% of your income comes from 20% of your clients. 80% of your results come from 20% of your time. 80% of your wealth will come from 20% of your investments. And the inverse is equally true. 80% of your effort produces only 20% of your results. Most people hear this and nod. Yeah, that makes sense. Then they go back to spreading their effort equally across everything. They don't actually change their behavior, and that's why they stay stuck. But the people building serious wealth, they obsess over this principle. They ruthlessly identify which 20% of their activities generate 80% of their results. Then they double down on that 20%, and they eliminate, delegate, or minimize everything else. The result? They produce exponentially more value in less time, and wealth flows from value creation. Let's start with Koch's core insight and translate it directly into money. In any business, any career, any investment portfolio, the distribution is never equal. A few activities generate most of the results. A few clients generate most of the revenue. A few skills generate most of the income. A few investments generate most of the returns. Think about this in concrete terms. If you're a freelancer with 20 clients, probably 4 of them generate 80% of your income. The other 16 combined barely matter financially. If you have 10 skills, 2 of them probably account for 80% of your earning potential. If you're investing in 20 stocks, 4 of them will probably generate 80% of your gains. The mathematical implication is devastating. You're spending 80% of your time on activities that generate only 20% of your results. You're working on the 16 low-value clients instead of focusing exclusively on the 4 that actually pay you. You're spreading your learning across 10 skills instead of mastering the 2 that would make you wealthy. You're diversifying across 20 mediocre investments instead of concentrating on the 4 exceptional ones. In 2026, this principle is more powerful than ever because the economy rewards concentration, not diversification of effort. AI and automation have eliminated the value of being mediocre at many things, but being exceptional at a few things, that's worth more than ever. Let's look at real examples. Take software engineers. There are millions of them. Most are competent at general programming. They know several languages, several frameworks, several domains. They're spreading their expertise, and they earn $80,000 to $120,000. Good income, but capped. Now look at AI engineers who went all in on machine learning and large language models 2 years ago. They ignored everything else. They concentrated their learning. They became exceptional at one thing that matters enormously right now. Companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google are paying them $400,000 to $1 million. Same profession, 10 times the income. The difference is 80-20 thinking. Or look at content creators. Most are posting on every platform: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, trying to be everywhere, spreading their effort thin, creating mediocre content across 5 platforms. They're busy, they're exhausted, and they're making maybe $2,000 a month. Then there are creators who identified that long-form YouTube is their 20%. They ignore Instagram, they ignore TikTok, they put 100% of their creative energy into one platform, creating exceptional content. They've built audiences of 500,000 subscribers. They're making $50,000 a month. Same time investment, 25 times the income. That's 80-20. Koch breaks down how to apply this principle across every area of wealth building. Let's go through each application systematically. Chapter 1. The 80-20 Principle in Business and Income. Koch argues that most businesses waste enormous resources on low-value activities. 80% of profits typically come from 20% of products. 80% of revenue comes from 20% of customers. If you're running a business or building a career, your first step is identifying which 20% of your activities generate 80% of your income. For businesses in 2026, this means brutal honesty. If you're running an e-commerce store with 100 products, 20 of them probably generate 80% of revenue. What if you eliminated the other 80 products? You'd free up inventory costs, simplify operations, reduce complexity, and could focus all your marketing and optimization on the 20 products that actually matter. Your revenue might drop slightly initially, but your profit margin would explode because you've eliminated 80% of the complexity and cost. Amazon does this religiously. They constantly analyze which products, which categories, which services generate disproportionate value. Then they double down there and ruthlessly cut everything else. That's how they went from an online bookstore to a trillion-dollar company. 80-20 thinking at scale. For individuals building income, this means identifying your highest value activities. If you're a consultant, which 20% of your services generate 80% of your income? Which clients pay the most and are easiest to work with? Focus there. Raise prices. Do more of that work. Fire or refer out the difficult, low-paying clients. If you're an employee, which 20% of your tasks generate 80% of the value your company sees in you? Those are the tasks that will get you promoted and paid more. Focus there. Delegate or minimize everything else. Most people spend 80% of their time on low-value busy work because it's easier and feels productive, but it doesn't increase their income. Here's a practical exercise Koch recommends. List every income-generating activity you do, every client, every service, every project, every task. Next to each, write how much income it generates and how much time it requires. Calculate the income per hour for each activity. You'll immediately see the 80-20 distribution. A few activities generate enormous value per hour. Most generate very little. The ruthless move? Eliminate or minimize everything in the bottom 80%. Double down on the top 20%. This feels scary because you're doing less, but you're making more because you're concentrating effort on what actually works. In 2026, with AI and automation available, this is easier than ever. The bottom 80% of tasks can often be automated, delegated to AI tools, or outsourced cheaply. ChatGPT can handle routine writing. AI can manage scheduling. Virtual assistants cost $20 an hour. You can eliminate your low-value work and focus exclusively on the 20% that only you can do at a premium level.
Chapter 2. The 80-20 Principle in Time Management. Koch argues that time management advice is mostly wrong. It tells you to be more efficient at everything, to optimize your entire day, to squeeze productivity out of every hour. But that's exhausting, and it doesn't work, because 80% of your time produces only 20% of your results. The real answer isn't time management, it's time elimination. Identify which 20% of your hours generate 80% of your valuable output. Protect those hours ruthlessly. Then eliminate, delegate, or half-ass everything else. For most knowledge workers and entrepreneurs, this means recognizing that your most valuable time is deep, focused work on high-leverage activities. Maybe it's 3 hours in the morning when your cognitive energy is highest. During those 3 hours, you can generate more value than most people create in a week of scattered effort. The 80-20 move is to structure your entire life around protecting those 3 hours. No meetings during that time, no email, no interruptions. That's sacred wealth-building time. Everything else in your day can be mediocre. Those 3 hours can't be. Koch gives the example of successful executives. They don't work harder than everyone else. They work differently. They identify the few decisions and activities that actually matter. Maybe it's one key strategic decision per week, one important relationship to nurture, one critical project to oversee. They spend their best time and energy there. Everything else gets delegated or ignored. In 2026, this principle is crucial because distraction is infinite. You could spend literally every waking hour responding to messages, attending meetings, consuming content, putting out fires. People do this. They stay busy for 60 hours a week, and they accomplish nothing important. The 80-20 alternative is to identify your 3 most important activities each day, the ones that actually move you toward wealth. Do those during your peak hours with 0 distractions, then coast through the rest of the day. Answer emails in batches, attend necessary meetings, handle administrative tasks, but don't confuse that with real work. Here's what this looks like practically. You wake up. You immediately do 3 hours of deep work on your most important wealth-building activity. Maybe you're building a business. Maybe you're learning AI. Maybe you're creating content. Maybe you're analyzing investments. Whatever it is, that's your 20%. After those 3 hours, the rest of your day is almost irrelevant financially. You've already done the work that matters. Everything else is maintenance, and you can maintain at 80% effort without it mattering. Compare that to someone who spreads their energy across the entire day. They do a little bit of everything. They're busy from morning to night, but they never concentrate enough energy on anything important to get exceptional results. They're exhausted and broke. You're relaxed and building wealth. Chapter 3.
the 80-20 principle in learning and skill development. This might be Koch's most powerful insight for building wealth in 2026. Most people are learning wrong. They're trying to become moderately good at many things. Generalists, jack of all trades. And in the AI economy, that's a death sentence financially, because AI is now moderately good at almost everything. If you're moderately good at writing, ChatGPT is probably better. If you're moderately good at design, AI image generators are faster and cheaper. If you're moderately good at analysis, AI data tools are more thorough. The only way to command premium income in 2026 is to be exceptionally good at a few high-value things. And getting exceptionally good requires 80-20 thinking about learning. Koch argues that 80% of the valuable skill in any domain comes from mastering 20% of the domain. Most of what's taught in courses, degrees, and books is filler. A small core of knowledge and practice accounts for most of the value. Think about learning to code. There are hundreds of programming languages and frameworks. Most software engineers try to learn many of them. They're mediocre at Java, okay at Python, familiar with JavaScript, and know a bit of C++. Spread thin. They earn $100,000. Now think about someone who ignores everything except becoming world-class at one thing. They spent 3 years mastering machine learning and PyTorch. They ignore web development. They ignore mobile apps. They concentrate. They become exceptional at the one thing that's most valuable in 2026. They earn $400,000 because that expertise is rare and valuable. The 80-20 principle says identify which 20% of skills in your field generate 80% of the income. Master those. Ignore everything else. Don't be well-rounded. Be exceptional at the valuable core. For content creators, this means mastering storytelling and psychology, not editing software, not camera equipment, not SEO. Those are 80% activities. The 20% that matters is creating content that resonates emotionally with an audience. Master that, and you can outsource or use AI for everything else. For investors, this means deeply understanding valuation and business models, not following market news, not trading frequently, not diversifying across 100 positions. The 20% is knowing how to identify exceptional businesses and having the discipline to hold them. Everything else is noise. For entrepreneurs, this means mastering sales and product market fit, not operations, not administration, not branding. The 20% is getting customers and delivering value they'll pay for. Everything else can be handled adequately by others or by systems. Koch recommends a brutal learning strategy. Identify the one skill that would 10x your income if you were world-class at it. Then spend 100% of your learning time on that skill for the next year. Ignore everything else. Don't diversify your learning. Concentrate it. This feels risky. What if you're wrong about which skill matters? But here's the truth. Being world-class at one valuable thing is worth infinitely more than being mediocre at 10 things. Even if you pick the wrong skill, mastering anything makes you more valuable than spreading yourself across everything.
Chapter 4. The 80-20 Principle in Investing. This is where Koch gets controversial and absolutely right. Most investing advice says diversify, own 100 stocks, spread your risk, don't concentrate. Koch says that's advice for people who want average returns. If you want exceptional returns, you do the opposite. You identify the 20% of investments that will generate 80% of your wealth, and you concentrate there. Warren Buffett proves this relentlessly. Most of Berkshire Hathaway's wealth came from a few exceptional investments: Apple, Coca-Cola, American Express, Bank of America. Not 100 companies. 5 to 10 extraordinary businesses held for decades.
Buffett explicitly says diversification is protection against ignorance. If you know what you're doing, concentrate. The 80-20 insight is that in any portfolio, most of your returns will come from a few exceptional winners. In a portfolio of 20 stocks, probably 4 will generate 80% of your gains. The other 16 will be mediocre or losers. If you know that mathematically, why would you spread equal capital across all 20? The rational strategy is to put the most capital into the highest conviction ideas, the investments you've researched deeply and believe will massively outperform. In 2026, this principle is even more important because the market is becoming more concentrated. A few companies, mostly in AI and technology, are growing exponentially faster than everything else. NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, Tesla, OpenAI when it goes public. These companies are compounding at rates that dwarf most of the market. If you owned equal amounts of NVIDIA and 100 other random stocks over the past 3 years, NVIDIA alone probably generated more gains than all the others combined. That's 80-20. One stock, massive return. 99 stocks, mediocre return. The contrarian 80-20 move is to identify the 3 to 5 businesses you have highest conviction in, the ones you understand deeply, the ones positioned to compound for decades, and put most of your investment capital there. Hold them. Ignore the noise. This requires knowledge and conviction. You can't just randomly concentrate. You need to know why these businesses will compound. But if you do the deep work to understand a few exceptional businesses, concentrating is far more rational than diversifying across mediocrity. Koch also applies this to investment time. Most investors spend time constantly researching new ideas, trading, rebalancing, following news. All that activity generates almost no value. The 20% that matters is finding exceptional businesses and holding them. Everything else is just noise that causes you to make bad decisions. Chapter 5. The 80-20 Principle in Relationships and Networking. Koch argues that most networking advice is wrong. It tells you to build a huge network, connect with thousands of people, be everywhere. But that's exhausting and ineffective. The 80-20 reality is that 20% of your relationships generate 80% of the value. A few deep relationships with the right people are worth infinitely more than superficial connections with hundreds. For building wealth, this means identifying which relationships actually lead to opportunities, learning, and growth. Maybe it's 3 mentors who push your thinking, 2 business partners who complement your skills, 5 clients who pay well and refer others. Those relationships are your 20%. Invest deeply in them. The other 100 people in your network? They're fine. Be cordial, but don't spend significant time and energy there. It's not returning value. In 2026, with social media creating the illusion that you need thousands of connections, this principle is crucial. You don't need 1 million followers. You need 100 true fans who actually engage with your work and buy what you create. You don't need to network with everyone at every conference. You need deep relationships with a few people doing exceptional work. The 80-20 move is to audit your relationships. Who actually helps you grow? Who do you help grow? Those are the relationships to invest in. Everyone else gets friendly distance. This applies to customers and clients too. In any business, 20% of customers generate 80% of revenue and 0% of headaches. They pay well, they're easy to work with, they refer others. The other 80% of customers generate 20% of revenue and 100% of the headaches. They complain, they pay slowly, they demand excessive support. The rational strategy is to fire the bottom 80% of customers and focus exclusively on the top 20%. Raise prices, deliver exceptional value to the clients who actually matter, ignore or refer out everyone else. This sounds harsh, but it's mathematics. Your time and energy are finite. Spending them on low-value relationships prevents you from deepening high-value ones. And deep relationships with the right people create disproportionate wealth. Chapter 6. The 80-20 Principle in Decision-Making. Koch makes a powerful point about decisions. Most decisions don't matter. You spend mental energy agonizing over choices that have almost zero long-term impact. Where to eat lunch, which email software to use, what color to paint the office. But a few decisions matter enormously. What career to pursue, who to marry, where to live, what business to start, how to invest your savings. These decisions have compounding effects that shape your entire life. The 80-20 principle says spend 80% of your decision-making energy on the 20% of decisions that actually matter, and make the other 80% of decisions quickly, with minimal thought. In 2026, this is critical because decision fatigue is real. Every time you make a decision, you deplete mental energy. If you're spending that energy deciding what to wear or what to have for breakfast, you have less energy for the decisions that actually build wealth. Successful people automate or simplify the 80% of decisions that don't matter. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day, not because he couldn't afford variety, because he didn't want to waste decision energy on clothing. Barack Obama did the same. Mark Zuckerberg does the same. They're preserving mental energy for the few decisions that actually matter. Strategic business decisions, key hires, major investments, relationship choices. Those decisions get deep thought. Everything else gets a simple heuristic or default. For building wealth, this means identifying your critical decisions. Maybe it's which skill to master, which business model to pursue, which investment strategy to follow. Those decisions deserve weeks of research and thought. They'll determine your financial trajectory for years. But most daily decisions, make them in 30 seconds and move on. Don't waste mental energy optimizing things that don't compound. Chapter 7. The 80-20 Principle in Happiness and Fulfillment. Koch argues that the 80-20 principle applies to happiness too. Most of what you do doesn't make you happy. You're busy, you're stressed, you're working on things that feel obligatory, and at the end of the day, you're not fulfilled. But a few activities generate disproportionate happiness. Maybe it's time with specific people. Maybe it's specific types of work that feel meaningful. Maybe it's specific hobbies or experiences. The 80-20 insight is that 20% of your time generates 80% of your happiness. And if you're not intentionally maximizing that 20%, you're choosing to be unhappy. This connects to wealth because the point of building wealth isn't just accumulation, it's freedom. Freedom to spend more time on the 20% that matters and less time on the 80% that doesn't. Most people build wealth and then keep doing the same stressful, unfulfilling activities that made the money. They're rich and miserable. That's failing to apply 80-20 to the ultimate goal. The move is to use wealth to eliminate the 80% of activities that drain you and maximize the 20% that energize you. Maybe that means working less. Maybe it means different work. Maybe it means spending more time with specific people or on specific projects. Koch himself did this. He built wealth through consulting and investing. Then he applied 80-20 to his own life. He identified that writing and thinking were his 20%, the activities that made him happiest and most fulfilled. So he structured his life to maximize those. He writes, he thinks, he invests, he ignores almost everything else. That's the ultimate application of 80-20. Build wealth through concentration on what works, then use that wealth to concentrate on what fulfills you. How to apply 80-20 rules in your life. Koch provides a simple framework. First, audit everything: your time, your income sources, your clients, your activities, your relationships, your investments, your skills. Write it all down. Second, analyze the distribution. Which 20% of your time generates 80% of your income? Which 20% of your clients generate 80% of your revenue? Which 20% of your skills generate 80% of your value? You'll be shocked. The distribution is almost never equal. A few things matter enormously. Most things barely matter. Third, make the brutal cuts. Eliminate, delegate, or minimize the 80% that doesn't matter. This is hard. It feels like you're giving up optionality, but you're not. You're eliminating distraction. You're freeing up energy to double down on what works. Fourth, double down on the 20%. Whatever is generating disproportionate results, do more of it. If one client pays you 5 times more than average, find 5 more like them. If one type of content gets 10 times more engagement, create more of that. If one investment is compounding faster than the rest, add to that position. Fifth, repeat. The 80-20 distribution is fractal. Even within your 20%, there's another 80-20 split. The top 4% of your efforts probably generate 64% of your results. Keep narrowing focus on what works best. Let's make this concrete for different wealth-building paths in 2026. If you're building a business, identify your most profitable product or service, the one customers love and pay premium prices for. Make that the center of everything. Build more variations of it, market it harder, optimize it relentlessly, phase out or minimize everything else. If you're a freelancer, identify your highest-paying, easiest-to-work-with clients. Raise your prices, take on more work like that. Politely fire or refer out the difficult, low-paying clients. You'll make more money working less because you're concentrating on high-value work. If you're learning skills, pick the one skill that would 10x your income. Spend 100% of your learning time there for 6 months. Become exceptional. Ignore the urge to dabble in 10 different things. Concentration beats diversification in skill development. If you're investing, identify your 3 to 5 highest conviction ideas, the businesses you understand and believe will compound for decades. Put most of your capital there. Stop constantly searching for new ideas. Let your best ideas compound. If you're creating content, identify which platform and content type generates the best engagement and monetization for you. Double down there. Ignore the pressure to be on every platform. One platform done exceptionally beats 5 platforms done adequately.
The mindset shift Koch teaches. Most people think wealth comes from doing more. More projects, more clients, more skills, more investments, more networking, more hustle. Koch proves the opposite. Wealth comes from doing less. Less but better. Fewer things with more focus. Subtraction, not addition. This is psychologically difficult because doing more feels productive. Saying no feels like you're missing opportunities, but the math is clear. Concentration beats diversification. Exceptional at a few things beats mediocre at many things. In 2026, with AI eliminating the value of being mediocre at everything, this principle is existential. If you're spreading yourself thin, you're competing with AI for commodity work, and you'll lose. But if you concentrate on becoming exceptional at a few high-value things, you're irreplaceable. You're creating value AI can't replicate, and you're building wealth. The 80-20 principle is uncomfortable because it requires you to admit that most of what you're doing doesn't matter. It requires you to make hard choices about what to eliminate. It requires discipline to stay focused when new opportunities constantly appear. But it works, mathematically, undeniably,
Repeatedly, it works. Look at any person building serious wealth. They're not doing 100 things. They're doing 3 to 5 things exceptionally well. Warren Buffett invests in a few great businesses. Jeff Bezos built Amazon by focusing relentlessly on customer experience and long-term thinking. Jensen Huang bet NVIDIA's entire future on AI and GPUs when no one else cared. Naval Ravikant focused on understanding leverage and building concentrated positions in startups. None of them are diversified in their efforts. They're concentrated. They identified what matters and went all in. That's 80-20 thinking. And here's the beautiful part. When you apply this principle, you don't just make more money, you have more time, you're less stressed, you're more fulfilled, because you're spending your energy on the few things that actually matter instead of spreading yourself across everything. You wake up knowing exactly what to focus on. You're not overwhelmed by 100 tasks. You have 3 important things to do. You do them well. The rest of the day, you're free. You're not juggling 20 clients. You have 5 great clients who pay well and are easy to work with. Your income is higher and your stress is lower. You're not trying to master 10 skills. You're world-class at 2 skills that the market values highly. You're irreplaceable and highly paid. You're not diversified across 50 mediocre investments. You're concentrated in 5 exceptional businesses that you understand deeply. Your returns are far higher because you're not diluted across mediocrity. This is what the 80-20 principle delivers: more wealth, less work; more freedom, less stress. But only if you actually apply it. Only if you make the hard choices to eliminate the 80% that doesn't matter, so you can concentrate on the 20% that does. So here's your challenge. This week, audit one area of your life: your time, your income, your clients, your skills, whatever feels most relevant. Identify the 20% that's generating 80% of the value. Then ask yourself honestly, what would happen if I eliminated or minimized the 80% that's not working and doubled down on the 20% that is? The answer is almost always the same. You'd make more money, you'd have more time, you'd be less stressed, you'd build wealth faster. So why don't people do this? Because it's scary, because it requires saying no, because it feels like you're putting all your eggs in fewer baskets. But here's the truth Richard Koch proves across hundreds of examples. Putting all your eggs in fewer baskets and watching those baskets very carefully is exactly how wealth gets built. Concentration, focus, discipline, saying no to the 80% so you can say yes to the 20% that matters. The world will tell you to do more, to hustle harder, to diversify, to be everything to everyone. And if you listen to that advice, you'll stay busy, exhausted, and broke. Or you can apply 80-20. Identify what actually works, eliminate everything else, concentrate your energy on the few things that generate disproportionate value, and watch your wealth compound while everyone else is still scattered across 100 mediocre efforts. The choice is yours, but the math doesn't lie. 80% of your results will come from 20% of your efforts. The only question is whether you're intentional about which 20% you focus on. Start today. Identify your 20%. Double down. Cut the rest. Build wealth by doing less but doing it better than anyone else. That's not lazy. That's strategic. That's how the rich actually build wealth, not by doing more, by doing less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. That's the 80-20 principle. That's how you make more money by doing less. Thank you so much for listening to the book. Stay tuned for the next exciting book.